In 1766, a French naval expedition sliced through the Atlantic waves. Life aboard these wooden vessels was brutal. The air smelled of salt and sickness, sailors slept in cramped hammocks, and French law dictated an exclusively masculine crew. If you checked the ship's official roster, you would see the name of Philibert Commerson, the expedition's chief botanist. Right below it, listed as his valet, was a young male servant named Jeanne Baret. But Jeanne was a secret wrapped in layers of tightly bound linen and oversized clothing. The valet was actually Jeanne Baret, a young woman risking everything to bypass naval codes. By boarding that ship, Jeanne committed to a grueling, multi-year deception. If she survived the harsh reality of an 18th century voyage without being discovered, she would become the first woman in history to circumnavigate the globe. Jeanne was born in rural Burgundy in 1740 to a peasant family. She grew up with no formal schooling, wealth, or obvious path into the scientific community. She had a keen memory for the natural world. She learned the healing properties of local plants by touching leaves and walking the fields, eventually mastering their complex anatomies and earning a regional reputation as an expert herb woman. Her practical, hard-earned expertise caught the attention of the royal naturalist Philibert Commerson. He hired her initially as his housekeeper, but quickly recognized her talent, elevating her to his trusted scientific partner. When Commerson was invited on the first French voyage around the world, naval law dictated Jeanne had to stay behind. Instead, she cut her hair, strapped her chest, and boarded the ship, refusing to let her gender exclude her from exploring the scientific frontier. Living as a man in the cramped, unsanitary quarters of a Navy ship required constant vigilance. Jeanne had to avoid public bathing, mask her body shape under heavy, bulky layers, and continually deflect rumors from a suspicious crew. The physical demands were immense. Commerson suffered from a severe leg ulcer and chronic illness, forcing Jeanne to take on the expedition's heavy labor. She hauled 50-pound bags filled with wooden plant presses and field gear up steep cliffs and through dense jungles. This animated chart shows the sheer volume of their fieldwork. While standard historical expeditions often brought back a fraction of this amount, Jeanne's grueling labor helped collect over 6,000 plant species across multiple continents, many entirely unknown to European science. Her fieldwork in the jungles of Rio de Janeiro likely led to the expedition's most famous discovery, this vibrant flowering vine, which was ultimately named Bougainvillea in honor of the ship's captain. The vast collection of specimens gathered during this voyage was possible because a woman was willing to perform the grueling physical labor that her partner, the chief naturalist, was too ill to attempt. In 1768, the expedition crossed into the Pacific Ocean and eventually dropped anchor on the shores of Tahiti. As soon as Jeanne stepped ashore, her carefully maintained disguise collapsed. The local Tahitians observed her body language and mannerisms, instantly recognizing her true gender and bypassing the cultural blind spots of the French sailors. The revelation stunned the crew. Facing potential mutiny and harsh official punishment under naval codes, Jeanne and Commerson quietly abandoned the main expedition, disembarking early on the French island of Mauritius. They continued their research in exile, but 5 years later, Commerson's health failed completely. He died in 1773, leaving Jeanne unmasked, unprotected, and stranded thousands of miles from the French coast. Left to her own devices, Jeanne refused to give up. She opened a tavern in Port Louis to support herself, carefully saving her money. She eventually met and married a French army officer named Jean Dubernat. This map tracks her complete journey. Starting from France, crossing to the Pacific and Mauritius, she finally secured passage back to France alongside her new husband in 1774, closing the loop of her voyage. The moment her boots touched French soil, she secured her place in history as the first woman to circumnavigate the globe, returning home with years of fieldwork and specialized botanical knowledge to her name. For decades, official 18th century records overshadowed her contributions. Her exhaustive fieldwork, heavy labor, and thousands of cataloged specimens were attributed solely to Commerson's fame, but her skill eventually commanded respect from the institution she defied. In 1785, the French Ministry of Marine officially recognized her maritime feat, granting her a lifetime annual pension of 200 livres for her service. Modern historians have since restored her place in the scientific record. In 2012, researchers honored her exhaustive botanical work by naming a new plant species, Solanum veratea. Jeanne Baret used her disguise to secure a place on the scientific frontier. By breaking the law, she gathered thousands of new specimens and ensured that her own knowledge of the natural world would finally reach the scholars in Paris.